Yeah, and Bran is like 7.
So Robb and Bran are on the same like mental maturity level. Does that say more about Bran or more about Robb? Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Glass Candle Podcast, where we look at what is, what could be, and what might come to pass. What will come to pass?
What
Yes,
will come? There is no to
one
pass.
of those.
You added the past, and it doesn't exist.
So I'm Eric.
And I'm Lillian, and we admin over at the A Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones Discussions and Theories Facebook group.
And today we are doing our second chapter in A Clash of Kings, Catelyn I. And for the next couple weeks now, we're going to be going through the Catelyn POV all the way through with a little bit of Theon and a little bit of Davos injected in because they kind of mesh in with Catelyn's storyline through this book, more or less, more than the others. As always, the episode format's going to be a quick chapter summary. We'll discuss who the main character is. We'll figure out who held the biggest influence over the POV character and why. We'll discuss any alternative actions that that person could have done. We figure out how the events in this chapter affect the other plots going forward. We'll discuss any alternative, or our one alternative POV that we would have for this chapter. And then we close out with quotes, standout appearances, and theories that may apply. You said you found a couple, and I read this thing, and I'm just like, well, no theories here. And then you texted me, and I was just like, I have no idea what you're going to bring. So you're going to get a legitimate reaction from me whenever you cite that this is the reason that Ned died is in this chapter. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead with our chapter summary. So the chapter opens with Robb experiencing firsthand heavy lies the crown. Cleos Frey,
Sir Cleos Frey,
husband to Tywin's sister Joanna and captive from Whispering Wood,
Jenna.
is brought in. Oh, right, because Joanna was his wife.
Yes. Come on now, read the fucking book.
Sorry, this is what the wiki told me. Is brought in
I'm gonna stab
to bring
you.
terms to Queen Cersei. Is brought in to bring Robb's terms to Queen Cersei. Robb's terms are reasonable and not asking for too much. 1. The release and safe transport of Arya and Sansa to White Harbor in exchange for William Lannister and Tion Frey. And everyone's like, who? Anyway, number 2. The return of Ned and his men's bones to Winterfell. 3. Ice is delivered to Robb at River Road. Number 4. Release of Tywin's captains in exchange for Robb's captives, except for Jaime. Number 5. Official recognition of Northern secession and the repealing of all oaths, vows, debts, etc. of the North and Riverlands to Lannister and Baratheon, and 10 hostages to be returned 2 per year over 5 years with good behavior. So yeah, not asking for a whole lot from the Lannisters, and in return, like, the North gets to be its own thing. The Great John, in all his diplomatic wisdom, thinks this is a great plan and starts chanting like a crazy person. The scene then shifts to a behind the scenes, and we look at Cat, Robb, and Ed discussing the situation. Robb released the Riverland lords to their homes, and Karstark is a threat to desert already. Robb knows his offer to Cersei is dog shit, but won't ever release Jaime, and it's definitely not because he's scared to fight him again. Robb is worried his now democratically elected position of king would be at risk, and is scared of impeachment and forced abdication. Cat shifts to talking about Robb's great idea about sending Theon to make a Greyjoy alliance. Cat tells him literally anyone would be better off to do this. Robb cuts her off and then wanders away. Cat then goes to hostage room and finds Brendan hanging out. They talk about comet symbolism, Tywin's asshole generals, new landing armies, tactics, Harrenhal, and finally agree that Renly is their best bet to avoid getting caught between two lions. End scene. Did I leave anything important out?
I don't think so. I interrupted you a bunch of times already.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, so it's a lot happened here. About three different sections where we get stuff. It's a good good place to pick up on Cat. This thing comes like 100 pages into the book too.
Yeah, I was surprised how far into it.
I thought it was like the second or third chapter after the prologue, but yeah, no, like everyone else gets their first chapter before Catelyn does.
I'm actually really surprised you didn't text me asking what page it started on. I think that's a first.
I found out how to use the internet. All right, so moving on to our first discussion point. Who is the main character of this chapter? And I said Robb.
Agreed.
It focuses on his presence in court, his Jesus Christ. Oh, his terms and leadership struggles. My handwriting is very bad. I was rushing through this. After writing that,
my handwriting is bad too, but I can read it. How can you not read your own writing?
A long summary that I wrote all out, and then towards the end, my hand was cramping up, and I was like, I gotta get this done now. And yeah. Anyway, his presence in court, his terms, and his leadership struggles is the main focus of this chapter. And that's, all through Robb. Witnessed, obviously, by Catelyn. What's your reason in your perfect handwriting?
I don't have perfect handwriting, but I'll tell you this. When I had to rush through and do a summary, that was when I had the fucked up one with John, my first grade sentences. But at least at least I could read them.
That's a callback.
Yeah, hashtag Ghost is a badass summary if you want to laugh at me speaking in first grade sentences.
That one does really well. It has like 5 views on YouTube. But that was back when we were a SoundCloud only. So most of the views came from the SoundCloud link.
I chose Robb just because it showcases his kingliness. Just him learning how to be a king and how to... Well, he's not very good at it. Trying to act like a king.
He's very worried about getting fired, which isn't a very kingly thing to do. I mean, sure, it's good to be aware of how happy or unhappy your people are. But he's really concerned about it.
Is there someone else in the books that speaks a line like that? Because I feel like it sounds so familiar that they can make and break a king. Or is that just like from the Kingmaker from Kristen Cole?
Kings can be made and they can be unmade. That sounds like a thing I've heard before.
I just can't remember where it came, like which book or anything. But when I read it, it made me think of that.
I can't remember either.
But yeah, just him trying to be a king and trying to rule his people.
In his defense, he is 15, so.
Okay, and?
He realizes he's in over his head. He didn't ask for it.
Could have said no.
Who is better at acting like a king, Robb or Joffrey?
Define acting like a king.
Acting like you're in charge and not worrying about what if people are going to depose you. Joffrey's just like,
Joffrey doesn't give a shit.
Robb's like, I don't know, they might vote somebody else to be their monarch. Because that's how that works, right? I got voted. I guess the North doesn't believe in the divine right to rule like the South does.
Because it's not like who the fuck is he gonna be anointed by? The old gods or trees? Gonna have a tree fucking
blood in front of a weirwood tree.
Sap on you? Like what the fuck?
Blood. They just drop buckets of blood on him in front of a weirwood tree.
So he looks like Carrie.
Yeah. Okay. They're like blood for the blood god.
Blood for the blood god.
Yes, that's a Metalocalypse. You don't know? Okay, never mind.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Anyway, are we done with that first? We can move on to who had the biggest influence.
Yep. So for me, the biggest influences on Cat, there was a couple different things. I think definitely in the beginning of the chapter, a lot of it had to do with Sansa and Arya. She was fighting Robb on his terms, which did include Sansa and Arya, but ultimately she kind of figured out that the girls aren't important enough to make a trade, and it really hurts her because she cares about her children. So that's going to affect the way she talked to Robb. And then towards the end of the chapter, I had it that Tywin was the biggest influence on her based on the fear of his movements and what he's going to do and the threat he poses to Robb.
So the patriarchy is what she's battling against.
So on a side note, the post I did today about the wind sample chapters,
Yeah.
when I was looking for art of Ariane, the entire time I had UBS in my head on how they hate all the art because people draw her skinny and she's not skinny. So I had to look really hard, but I picked ones that made her look curvy because of that.
Thick with two C's.
Just because you have
But
to
yeah,
hate the
no,
patriarchy.
she is challenging the patriarchy unknowingly, I suppose. Girls aren't good enough to save, but that's one of my. I think that's one of my quotes later.
She
Uh,
doesn't consider Robb to be the patriarchy. Like, yeah, she acknowledges the fact that he's a king, but he's still her son, you know?
yeah. Um, I had Rob as the biggest influence over Kat, but not so much as him over her, but her trying to get him to hear her. So Oliver, well, for the first 2/3, was her opinion on him, like her internal monologue on his conduct with Cleo's Ray, and then afterwards, her challenging every single thing he did, which isn't a bad thing. Young
Uh,
kings should be challenged, and especially
but
15-year-old
not
boys who are
by your
terrified.
mother.
It was in private.
Edmure was there. Oliver was there.
A squire doesn't count as a person, and really to Rob, Edmure doesn't count as a
Squire
person
doesn't
either.
count as a person.
No, they're a servant slave person.
I happen to like Podrick, okay? He is a person.
Sure, he's Brienne's slave boy.
She doesn't even
His
want him
servant.
there.
She orders him to clean his or her horse and shit.
She's
They're
trying to
treated
get rid of him.
treated less than people. Indentured servitude.
Okay, so yes, it is good to question. Well,
Again,
it
not
depends
so
on
much
what kind
question.
of society you're in.
Well,
But
we're coming at it from a modern lens, and it's good that she's telling Rob, I don't think you should have done that. I think it would have been better to do this. You really think this is a great idea? Instead of being like, yes, my king, my son, you are the best.
okay,
What, you disagree? You think she should be worshiping Rob
I don't think she should be
and being
worshiping
like,
Rob. I think she should
this is
know her place.
all great. She said it afterwards while they were alone. Again, Edmure doesn't count because Rob doesn't give a shit about Edmure at all.
He took out his frustration because of Kat on Edmure. That wasn't fair.
No, it wasn't fair to Edmure. Rob's a little shit when he did that. Don't call me boy. And Ed's
Yeah.
like, dude, I'm on your side. But no, like, it's you can't change my mind that her coming to Rob in private, not in front of everybody, was a bad thing.
I don't think that's private, but okay.
We are at an impasse.
Then I'm gonna say it again on our next point too.
What could Kat have done differently, knowing how the future turns out, to avoid that result?
Not
Um,
scolded Rob in front of people.
She didn't. So next point. Go ahead with whatever more you got to say, because I don't want to be cutting you off. In front of people, in front of one person, you mean?
2 people.
Rob tosses his crown to Oliver and tells him to go put it in his room, and Oliver fucks off. So it's one person.
He could have come back. You don't know that.
He doesn't come back. I do know that.
No, you don't.
Rob's bedroom isn't right behind the
You don't know
Grand
that.
Hall meeting.
You don't
Yes,
know
I do.
that.
Yes,
Where
I do.
is it at? Where is it at in River Run?
He goes away, is what it says. So obviously he doesn't go away 2 feet into his room. Grey Wind doesn't count as a person either. He's a dog.
Oh yeah, Grey Wind is there.
He's a dog. Doesn't count.
Technically, Blood
So
Raven
now there's 3 people. He's
Technically,
being skin
Blood
changed by
Raven
Blood
could be
Raven.
there.
Okay, right.
Okay, now I have to add Grey Wind down to my standouts.
Do you have any more invalid
Yes, I do, but you
responses to that?
keep fucking cutting me off. So not scolding Rob and then agreeing to return to Winterfell because ends up being. She wouldn't fucking die if she went to Winterfell. Oh well, wait, because Theon takes Winterfell. She should have listened to her king. How's that?
Because, kings have divine right to rule and everybody should obey them.
Okay,
No, she shouldn't have listened to her king because she was needed there. It's a good thing that she didn't. And Rob never ordered her to go anyway. He was doing that
He said that he could
maybe Winterfell
order.
would be good for you.
Yeah, go see the fucking little babies.
Robb was a little baby that needed her there.
He's 15.
He's a boy. He's a child.
Nearly a man grown. And a
You know who
fucking
else says
king.
that? Bran. Bran says that.
Yeah, and Bran is like 7.
So Robb and Bran are on the same like mental maturity level. Does that say more about Bran or more about Robb? Because they both think they're nearly men grown.
Bran doesn't think of himself as nearly a man grown. He thinks
Yes, he does.
No, he says that when he's talking about Jon and Robb. I don't remember.
He says it about himself.
No.
Read the books.
No.
He says it all the time. I didn't even realize anyone else said it until I read this chapter, and I was like, oh yeah.
Fine. Whenever we get to Bran, I'll pay attention.
He said it in A Game of Thrones. Anyway, going back to the topic at hand, I say Cat should have talked to Theon and try to quote convince. I actually wrote trick, but that sounds worse. So convince him into. Oh, that's why I wrote trick. Trick him into convincing Robb to let him stay as like a personal guard, or for Mallister or somebody to go with Theon instead of Robb sending Theon to go by himself.
And how would she do that?
She goes to Theon and be like, Theon, you were really brave in Whispering Wood, and you say Bran, and you did all this stuff. You should really like stay here with Robb. Maybe we can form like a Wolf's Guard or something like that, and then you can be the Lord Commander of Robb's Wolf's Guard, and this would be like really cool. You can wear like dog helmets like the Hound. It'd be great. And he'd be like, that sounds fucking cool, Cat. Or he'd call her Miss Cat, because they're tight like that.
Lady.
No, he'd call her Mrs. Cat, because Theon's a hipster. Or just be like, hey, Mallister, like, go with Theon. Robb told me to. And he'd be like, oh, well, if Robb said.
Well, and then there's the theory that technically Mallister's there anyways.
What?
Or an agent of Mallister is on Pike and killed Theon. Or killed Balon. You've never heard that?
Nope, sounds like dog shit.
You need to stop being mean to Preston. He is full of shit a lot of the time, but yeah.
I didn't. I've watched all the Preston videos, so I have heard it before. I just don't remember that at all. But
I
no.
just remember he's talking about Seaguard, and Seaguard stands for Seaguard against the motherfucking Ironborn.
Right.
That was what I remember the most.
But yeah, so knowing how Theon incredibly botches the alliance mission with Balon, it would make more sense to either convince Theon to stay or for someone to go with him to keep him on track. Probably stay, because if he goes with him, then Balon could kill somebody and be like. So convincing Theon to stay was my primary point. That's what I think.
Well, obviously Robb wasn't for it. Robb was set on sending Theon. Like, do you think Theon could have convinced Robb to let him stay?
Perhaps.
Do you even like the Kings?
Who?
Your LA Kings.
Oh, I like Jonathan Quick. I was like, Stannis, Renly, Joffrey, Robb. Yeah, like, I like some of them. No, it's a Jonathan Quick shirt. Number 32. Team USA.
I just know who the Kings are. I don't know that. Okay.
Jonathan Quick's the goalie. I'm wearing a Jonathan Quick t-shirt.
We'll talk later about hockey, because I had a question right now.
Nobody later. Had any idea. I'm wearing a Jonathan Quick t-shirt, so. But yeah, so do you have anything else on this one?
No.
All right, so take us into the next.
How do the events of this chapter affect the other plots? Or butterfly effect. So, I had that Robb's peace terms causes Joffrey to treat Sansa like shit, like even more than he already was, because he's already pissed off about Robb's victories, and this just kind of exacerbates the problem that he is not necessarily speaking down to Joffrey, but that it's an insult to Joffrey that he thinks he can speak to him on that level. It leads to Cat's parlay with Renly and eventual meeting with Stannis because of Blackfish. Well,
because of Cat.
Well, because of Cat, but it came from that discussion with Blackfish. Like, he agreed that's where they should go.
Yeah, he agreed with Cat's idea. So I just had a lot of the obvious answers. For one, shipping Theon off, and Kat's like, that's not going to work, and we see it doesn't work.
How the fuck did I
Um,
miss that?
I mean, it's obvious, and we all know how. Maybe it was too obvious, is what I'm saying. Um, because I didn't think of Joffrey. I forgot that part.
But
Because I was just like, oh
Theon is
yeah, this
a
is
big
when Brienne.
problem.
Huh?
But Theon is like a huge problem for the rest of the book. How did I not?
Don't worry, that's what I'm here for. Again, I didn't bring up Joffrey or write Joffrey down because I couldn't remember what happens after Cleos gets sent away.
He comes back.
Yeah, he comes back and then he goes again, and he doesn't come back after that. Spoiler warning. But then we get the Sir Stafford building the army in Lannisport, so that kind of leads into Robb, not abandoning River Run, but going away from River Run, and playing out west and doing all that mess. I can't exactly recall what happened or what consequences the River Lords dispensing has on everything. I know eventually Edmure calls them all back.
You can't
But
remember what the effect is right now, or
yeah, like how it
the
responds to
forces the
this
forces have gone
point.
down.
Right, I know they've gone down, but eventually Edmure calls them all back because they fight at the Forks.
And then Robb gets mad at him because he fucked up his plan.
Right, because Robb didn't choose to dispense information, but that's kind of getting down to the weeds there. But yeah, the big one here is Theon going north, Cat going south, Robb going west is the main points of contact here. So, pick an alternative point of view to witness the events of this chapter from. So obviously we can't get all the events from one single other point of view, but I picked Cleos Frey. So I wanted to know his first impression of King Robb. At this point, Robb's kind of already been situated in his position, so we don't get to see an immediate after effect from anyone else in that angle. So Cleos Frey being brought up from the dungeons and being introduced to King Robb, sitting there with his sword up and his big doggy there. I wanted to know his opinion on the terms, because Robb knows they're dog shit, so I wonder if Cleos Frey, when he's hearing this, is just like, what the fuck? Like, this is never going to work. And
He's
then
a stupid Frey.
He's not stupid.
You're expecting a lot out of a Frey.
He's a Lannister, more or less. Robb even says that. He hasn't lived with the twins in forever, and he's like fully ingrained into the Lannister side.
You say so.
Well, the book says so, not me.
Anyway,
and I wanted to know from his point of view, what the reactions of the Lannisters would be to these terms, and if he has any thoughts on Jaime being in captivity and what kind of effect that has, like on morale, with him being like the vessel point of what we can probably project onto the other characters and stuff. Your turn, unless you have any response to any of that, aside from he's a Frey.
Actually,
big tinfoil theory right there.
I actually did think about him when I was going over this point, but I ended up choosing Edmure instead, because we do get a couple lines from him, and he tries to defend Robb, and that goes horribly. But when he's hearing Robb's terms, I wonder what he's thinking, because it specifically says Cat calls him, or that he was speaking on behalf of the Riverlands because her father was ill. But then when Robb, is doing his terms and is requiring that the Riverlands go free as well, I just wonder what Edmure thinks. And I think we've talked about it before, that Robb kind of is usurping his claim to the Riverlands,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would just be interesting to see how he feels about all that.
I thought it was kind of funny how Edmure follows him out into that back hallway with Cat. So it's like Robb, and then you have Cat, and you're like, that makes sense. Robb Squire, yeah, okay, yeah, his servant boy has to follow him, and also Edmure's here. And it's like he's like, oh well, Robb's going there, so I should go too because I'm important. And then he tries to back up Robb, and Robb like screams at him and throws his tantrum, and he's like, I'm trying to help. It's kind of he just seems like he's trying to insert himself in these important conversations, and nobody wants him here. And it's like, he should be
Oh,
he should be treated a little bit better.
poor
But
Edmure.
everyone but Cat kind of just dismisses him. It's kind of hilarious, but it's also really sad. He's like a 30-year-old man being bullied by a 15-year-old. You want to go ahead and take us into quotes?
All right, so my first quote is when Kat is talking to Robb about Theon and trying to get him to change his mind and trying to reason with him. I don't know if Robb doesn't know his history and is just naive or just thinks too much of his relationship with Theon. And, Kat says, I would sooner you sent someone else to Pike and kept Theon close to you. Who better to treat with Balon Greyjoy than his son? And Kat offers all of these names. And she says, you'll have them sooner if you keep his son as a hostage. She's talking about Balon's longships. And she says, Balon Greyjoy is not a man to be trusted. He wore a crown himself, remember, if only for a season. He may aspire to wear one again. And Robb is like, okay, that's fine. He can be king of the Iron Islands. I don't care.
That part there is like the very next line that I thought was really important. He said, I'll give him a crown if he wants it. And it's like, Rob, that's not how the Ironborn work, right? You don't give them shit.
They're going to take that.
Right. Like, they'll take it and then, like, throw it at your head and knock you out. And then take yours and be like, I like this one better. I'm king of the North now.
Like, he was alive during the Greyjoy Rebellion. Like, he should know what went down. Like, and that's the reason why Theon has lived with you basically all of your life.
Yeah, he's massively ignorant to the Ironborn. It's like no one ever told him anything about it.
Bad Maester Luwin.
Bad Luwin, bad Cat, bad Ned. Someone should have said something. To be fair, though, no one thought Theon would betray him like that.
Well, Theon wasn't even planning on it.
Well, Cat knew it.
Yeah.
Because she's amazingly perceptive.
I don't think that she
and
thought...
is right about a lot of things.
I don't think she thought that Theon was going to betray. I think she knew that Balon was not going to go for it, and Balon is the more important person, obviously.
Yeah, she had like 98% of it figured out already. Can you vocalize how much you're eye-rolling me right now?
Nope, because I am on record saying that I like Cat now.
You're fake and you're lying.
I do like
her.
So
on page 113, so I brought this up in the chapter summary. It says, this is Robb. He says, I can't really release the Kingslayer, not even if I wanted to. My lord would never abide it. Cat says, your lords made you their king. And then Robb says, they can unmake me just as easy. And it really is just pointing out Robb's uneasiness and the frailty of his position. Everybody else in Westeros is taking him very seriously, and Robb doesn't seem like he's taking himself very seriously, or doesn't think his people are taking him seriously if he can't make unpopular decisions, and he thinks he's going to get kicked out. And it's I never got the impression that it was a very I'm going to say this, like, unstable position that he was in. It seemed like he's always been pretty locked in, and it might just be his perception of it because he's just a dumb kid, but it stuck out to me.
It probably goes back to when he first called the banners and, all these older men wanted to take command and he asserted himself. So he may still have some doubt in terms of that maybe other people in his party would be better to lead.
That was so long ago, and since then they all agreed to follow him. He won a bunch of battles.
It's changed
and then they
now.
Named him a king, so he should be grown out of that by now.
But as you keep saying, he's a 15-year-old boy. Like, he can be insecure as fuck.
He needs to have more confidence. You got another quote?
Yes, I do. So when Cat is with Brendan on page 117, he's come back from scouting, and they're talking about the comet. He says, you can see it by day now. My men call it the Red Messenger, but what is the message? And Cat says, the Great John told Robb that the old gods have unfurled a red flag of vengeance for Ned. Edmure thinks it's an omen of victory for Riverrun. He sees a fish with a long tail and the Tully colors red against blue. Side, I wish I had their faith. Crimson is a Lannister color. That thing's not crimson, Sir Brynden said, nor Tully red, the mud red of the river. That's blood up there, child, smeared across the sky. And it's just interesting because, we've seen in, well, we've seen Crescent's point of view now, and the last chapter of A Game of Thrones with Dany talking about the comet. It's just interesting to see everybody's different perspective on it, and people are trying to put a positive twist on it, while others are being, I don't know if I want to say more realistic or pessimistic. The fact of the matter is, it's a fucking comet. We don't know if it means anything, if it actually does mean anything, but everybody is taking it as, like, interpreting it as a sign for their specific party.
Yeah, I had a quote marked down too. And this kind of lines up with Marwyn's take on prophecy. Everyone's seeing this comment as like, oh, this means we're gonna do this. Like every single side thinks it means that they're gonna, like, the comment is for them. And again, fast forward, what, 3 books later, and Marwyn's like, this is all bullshit. And I think we as fans should listen to Marwyn a little bit more because this comment doesn't point to any freaking ancestry or house or people or anything like that. And this right here, that little quote that she just read out, shows how it can be applied to any different people, except it doesn't apply to any of them, or it applies to all of them.
We don't know yet.
Or it's just dumb, and people like look up to the sky to find like visions and omens and stuff. It's like, oh well, I saw a bird picking a worm out of the dirt today, so that's a good sign for us. It's like, that doesn't fucking mean anything, dude.
Well, remember...
Same thing.
Not remember, because I think it's even older than me. Like, there was that cult who was convinced there was a comet, but there was, like, an alien spaceship behind the comet. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
What book is this in?
Real world. Our world.
So, Westeros ain't... Oh, okay. No, I don't...
Okay, so I don't even know. I'm pretty sure it's older than me. Pretty sure. But there was this cult, and the leader convinced them that some comet was flying by Earth, and people were looking at it as a different element, just like this. And he convinces people that there was an alien spaceship behind the comet that was going to take them to the afterlife. I don't fucking know.
Oh, yeah. And they were saying, like, there's a couple, like, the aliens sent a couple people down to Earth to get people ready, and there's, like, a couple people that thought they were aliens, and their parents were like, no, dude, you're a fucking person. And they're like, nah, Mom, I'm an alien. Yeah, and then they all got together and drank Kool-Aid and died.
Yeah.
Or got sucked up in the spaceship.
My point being is that we do the same shit with celestial bodies in our world as what they're doing.
Y'all, not me.
Well, not me either, but people do it, is the point.
Okay, so you hijacked 2 of my quotes, so I'm gonna go before you can steal another one.
Sorry.
It's on page 114. When Cat and Robb are talking about releasing Jaime, he says, I'll fight him again if I have to, but I might have been able to trade the Kingslayer for father, but... And then Cat says, but not for the girls? Girls are not important enough, are they? And that's almost directly, like, George, like, a big theme that the people say George R. R. Martin writes in here is how women are treated and all this stuff, as though, like, they're less than. Mm-hmm. And with that being in mind as a topic that a lot of people have talked about, that line really jumped out at me as just being a blatant example of that line of thought, to where they can't trade Jaime for 2 girls because, like the quote says, girls aren't important enough.
Do you think they would be willing to trade Jaime for Bran and Rickon?
No.
I don't think it's necessarily a girl thing. I think it's that Jaime is so valuable, Ned is the only person they would have traded him for.
Yeah.
But it does point out, like, it's a good point that women are not equal.
Yeah. Whether or not the context of this remains true or not, that sentiment, girls aren't as important, still resonates with a lot of other things in the books.
In the books and even in the real world too. A lot of countries, you don't want a girl, you want a boy to carry on the family name.
Everybody should be more like Dorne.
Okay. So I have another one on 118. So I read this chapter a couple days ago, and that's when I texted you saying I had series. And then I read it again this morning, and I don't know how I missed this the first time around. Brendan's telling her about what's going on in the Riverlands. Barrack's doing this with Thoros and the Blackwoods, and Jonos was wounded, all of that. And then he says, Dairymen recaptured their lord's keep, but held it less than a fortnight before Gregor Clegane descended on them and put the whole garrison to the sword, even their lord. Cat was horror-struck. Derry was only a child. Ay, and the last of the line as well. The boy would have brought a fine ransom, but what does gold mean to a frothing dog like Gregor Clegane? Okay, so if Gregor doesn't care about money, then what the fuck is with where's the gold in the village? Blah, 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 that whole thing with Arya. That's what it reminded me of. Is there gold in the village? Where's Barrack? I don't remember the questions they asked, but it's like really repetitive. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the interrogations and stuff.
Yeah. So obviously they want the gold, so that's a stupid line from Brendan.
Yeah, I think Gregor and his men are still stealing gold.
Yeah.
Gregor just doesn't care about ransoming people.
I agree. But
so
it just stuck out for me.
Yeah, true. Like he ended the dairy line. And isn't that a point in later? Isn't that the chick that Lancel marries?
Amy Amaray Frey.
But isn't she somehow the daughter of a dairy person or something?
She is like loosely related on her mother's side because her father was Merritt Frey. And so somewhere on her mother's side there was a dairy. And when Lancel married her, it was basically the crown saying that she was the heir to the dairy lands, but there's an argument that Jenna's children should be there instead. Jenna and
Sure.
I can't remember her husband's name, but the Frey guy.
Cleos?
No, that's her son.
You corrected me in the intro saying that Cleos was Gemma's husband.
No, I corrected you in the intro because you called her Joanna.
And then you said it was Gemma.
It is.
So Cleos' wife is Jenna.
No, his mom.
Cleos Frey, husband to Tywin's sister Joanna, is what I wrote, and you said no. Let's read frickin' chapter again.
Well, Cleos Frey was a son of the Lady Jenna, who was sister to Lord Tywin. Page 108. So you wrote it wrong.
I wrote it wrong.
I just corrected the name. I didn't say it. I didn't catch that you said husband.
Well, you are wrong too then, because you should have corrected me better.
I'm sorry, I can't fix all of the mistakes. I can't keep track of all of them.
There's so few in between. It's tough. Obviously I didn't catch it either. It's also on page 118. For us at least. I don't know if this comes up in Arya's first chapter, but this is the first that Cat hears that Barrack was killed. Psych, just kidding, he wasn't actually killed. It says, and the southern lordling Barrack Dondarrion has been raiding the raiders, following on Lord Tywin's foraging parties and vanishing back into the woods. It's said that Sir Burton Craycole was boasting that he'd slain Dondarrion until he led his column into one of Lord Barrack's traps and got every man of them killed. And yeah, they said a little bit later, but nothing more else. But yeah, that's the first time Cat and Brendan pass on information about. So Barrack was dead, but actually he wasn't, so who knows? And that's some foreshadowing. I got another quote. So this one's on Robb's victories. It says, this is Catelyn speaking, Robb is like to give him that wish. He is restless as a cat sitting here. Edmure and the Great John and the others were Jamon. Her son had won 2 great victories, smashing Jaime Lannister and Whispering Wood, and routing his leaderless host outside the walls of Riverrun in the Battle of the Camps. But from the way some of his bannermen spoke, he might have been Aegon the Conqueror reborn. So yeah, a lot of what we hear about Robb is hype, and this kind of highlights that in the story. So, ambushing Jaime, winning that fight, good job on actually winning what you started. But then the fact that they added in smashing his leaderless host outside the walls, that kind of taints it a little bit. It was still an ambush, a surprise attack, but because they were leaderless, that whole camp was in massive disarray without any kind of central authority. So even if they had been able to be alerted, they wouldn't have any kind of central command to give orders. So it kind of makes it a little bit easier for Rob's guys to win that one. But yeah, he and his men refer to him like Aegon the Conqueror. Again, they weren't saying he was, but the way they were boasting about him kind of overhyped Robb a little bit. But it's good to have those rumors whenever you're like tossing them out there into the wind and the Lannisters hear it, and some small Lannister foot soldiers like, well, they say Robb is like Aegon the Conqueror and he's like really good and stuff like that. So I don't know about if I feel good about going in and fighting him. So Northern propaganda, it works.
Well, isn't Drogo called Aegon the Conqueror come again as well by Viserys?
Yeah.
Maybe that's just bad luck. Like, don't say that.
Well, Robb doesn't die for another book and a half, so
Still dies.
true.
Moving on to standout appearances.
So my first one is a Harrenhal history. So that's at the very, very end of the book, and this massive exposition that's given to us about how King Harren raised it by the waters of the God's Eye 300 years ago, and all this stuff, and he pretty much destroyed the land around it to build it. Harren was a really bad person. A bunch of people died making this thing, and then the day that he actually got in there is when Aegon the Conqueror landed in King's Landing, and it's a good hefty paragraph there that's talking about Harrenhal, which kind of seems out of place in this chapter. It's like a really random spot to drop it in there, but yeah, it's dropped in there, and we've heard Harrenhal before through the story, and now we kind of get that backstory out of it. So even though it's not even seen in this chapter, it did stand out as a neat little bit of history there. And then I have Great John acting like chanting like a hooligan, because he starts to chant twice. It's like the first one didn't work, and then or like he thought Robb was done, and he starts chanting, and Robb's like, "I'm not finished yet," and he's like, "Ah, fuck." And then Robb finishes, and now he's like, "All right, now." And then he does it. What's with this asshole and loving his chants?
I had him too. I just love the way that Kat describes him, how he's pounding his like big ham of a fist or whatever else while he's screaming all of this stuff. He's funny.
He's an idiot.
But he would be fun to be around, don't you think?
No, he'd be really loud. He'd be like, "Hey, Johnny, what do you think about Robb?" And then he just gets triggered, and like his mind snaps, and he starts chanting and going around breaking shit, tossing tables, "King in the North."
Okay.
Around. It's like, fuck, that's not what all I said was like these people robbed somebody, and he's like, "Robb, King in the North," and it just goes nuts. It's like, John, fuck, calm down, bro.
He has a good heart though. Like he genuinely cares. You don't think so? Your face says no.
I mean, I don't see where we witness that he cares.
He has a lot of pride in Robb and in the North, and he cares about Northern honor.
I think he just likes screaming.
He just wants to be heard. Okay.
Robb was like, "Let me finish." So.
Alright, so besides Great John, I had Rickard Karstark. So he walked out like the first page of the chapter once, Robb started even saying that he was going to have peace terms. Definitely feel sorry for him. We know what's going to happen later on. He lost 2 sons at Whispering Wood, so you can't really fault him for being upset. But it definitely stands out since he is one of the vassal lords. Like, we know his name. And it's not like just random soldier number 5, whatever, walked out in the middle of the king speaking. Like, his lord's bannerman walked out.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
You figured he'd be able to compose himself a little bit more and just suck it up and stand there. Because his big thing is, we need to kill Jaime. Well, yeah, and then Robb was saying he wasn't going to kill Jaime, so fair enough. But he's flawed, and he needs to not get over it, but start moving forward.
Well, he lost 2 sons. Like, what do you want him to do?
Move forward. Give his attention to his whatever else he has living. The people that he likes that are still living. Like it's what Catelyn says to Brienne. She's like, "Dude, Renly's dead, so why don't you just like try to help people who are still alive?"
Okay. Anyways, my next one was Leo Spray, and we've talked about him a lot. Kat's description of him, how he did not take after the Lannisters at all. He looked like a Frey, looks weak like a Frey, whatever. I'm kind of over him now for as much as we talked about him already.
Okay.
And my last one was Grey Wind, and I only added him because you talked about him earlier. He had a nice little part during the peace terms where he threatened Cleos, basically. And then he's howling. He ends up howling when the Great John is chanting and everybody else starts chanting. Good
Yeah,
dog.
Grey One's a problem too. He was an
Why is he a
asshole.
problem?
He just didn't do anything. He didn't need to go in there and start snarling in his face. Bad dog.
He did it because of Robb. He didn't do it on his own.
Rob's a dickhead too.
You just hate dogs.
Shaggy's cool.
And he's the craziest of them all.
He's a good puppy. No, I mean I get why Rob sent him out there to be really, really mean and try to be really scary. And, he wore his big boy pants to the council meeting, so he has to act like a big boy.
So you ready for theories?
Yeah, let's go.
The North and the Others. So on page 107, when Cat is describing Robb's crown, she's talking about the open circlet of hammered bronze, incised with the runes of the first men, surmounted by 9 black iron spikes wrought in the shape of long swords. Of gold and silver and gemstones it had none. Bronze and iron were the metals of winter, dark and strong to fight against the
No, go ahead, finish.
cold. Asshole. And then on 110 to go with that, she's talking about the men who left with Ned, because this is when Robb is demanding that their bones be brought back. Living men had gone south and cold bones would return. And that to me kind of reminds me of the wildlings coming through the wall and then they're gonna die and be raised as whites. Anyways, all of this together, do you think the fact that the crown is made out of those metals mean anything?
Well, to the Northerners, it seems to. And it's going to be funny when they walk up to the others with their bronze armor and a normal iron sword and they die. Because that doesn't make any sense why bronze and iron would stop the others. But I look forward to reading that.
Well, the other thing that stood out too is that there were 9 black iron spikes. Like, do we know anything about the number 9? I can't remember anything specifically.
No, I tried to remember too because I was like, ooh, 9 numbers. This is important. And couldn't think of anything. How many forts are on the wall?
How many castles are on the wall?
Yeah.
A shit ton. More than 9. Well, there's like 20.
Maps in the front. Nope, not in this book. Must be in one of those other ones that have it. Yeah, I don't know if there's 9 others or if there's more. I think there's more. The last hero took how many companions?
12.
12. Yeah, 7 gods.
Well, they wouldn't care about the 7.
I'm just trying to throw the numbers out.
7 gods, 12 companions, a partridge in a pear tree.
Wrong book.
Your response to me reading it, do I sound like
No, I just knew it was going to be the iron beats
okay.
the others thing again.
I don't agree with that whatsoever. That
Sure.
who knows? Maybe it will, because they have the whole thing with the iron swords across the lap, so the king's a winner, and maybe it is keeping their souls in. I don't fucking know what any of that means. But obviously...
That sounds so dumb.
Well, but obviously those metals are important to the Northerners. There has to be a reason why.
Because it was probably some sort of like special dragon steel or something like that.
Valerian steel?
Valeria wasn't around in the long.
Valyria was around. Valyrians just weren't in Westeros. Valyria existed.
Did it?
Did it not? It existed.
The Long Night in Westeros coincides with the Bloodstone Emperor and the Blood Betrayal, which was pre-Valyria.
Is it?
Yeah, because the Blood Betrayal led to the downfall of the Great Empire of the Dawn, afterwards,
Which
which all
led to
those
the
other
rising of
demons,
Valyria.
including Valyria,
Okay.
which is why I called it Dragonsteel.
Well, regardless, they don't have steel. They have iron and bronze.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The last hero picked up a special sword afterwards too.
The last hero was Orahai. The prince that was promised, Nisa
No,
Nisa.
no, just the last hero went up there and he found a special sword.
From an ice dragon? You called it dragon steel.
Yes, I called it Dragonsteel because that's what it's called.
Who calls it that?
Do you read the books?
Apparently not.
Apparently not. No, like the last hero goes up there. Maybe it's not exactly Dragonsteel, but he finds a special weapon up there. I'll try to find that in the fucking internet.
I feel like I sound retarded.
Same.
The wiki doesn't have anything about this sword you're talking about.
At Castle Black, Samwell Tarly tells Jon Snow he found one encounter of the Long Night that spoke to the last hero slaying others with the blade of Dragonsteel.
That's right. That's where the
Supposedly
dragon
they could
steel
not stand against. So Jon wonders if Dragonsteel refers
is
to Valyrian steel.
Valyrian steel. Okay,
You're welcome.
I remember that line now. Yes, you were correct.
So, myth becomes legend, legend becomes rumor. It gets tossed down the lines to where dumb Northerners now think an iron sword will beat ice demons.
Ice demons who eat babies.
Yeah, allegedly. So, no, that's why I think this whole iron keeping things locked up. It's such a iron is such a common thing in Westeros. If someone accidentally took, like removed iron, like say a sword from the Kings of Winter, like in the crypts, if someone just like took a couple because they needed a sword, and
Like what happens?
yeah, like what happens, and then how nothing happens after it. You know, maybe that's a sign. But even if that had like some kind of massive ramification, like oh no, where are we gonna get another iron sword from?
Well, and they say a lot of them like are brittle and are breaking down too.
Exactly, they're massively important. Or either that, or the uh, the ghost of the Kings of Winter are already out and about,
Doing what?
waiting to be called by Jon to fulfill their oaths.
Oh fuck.
Oh fuck! I mean, that's Return of the King, a Tolkien book.
Oh Jesus Christ. Okay.
But no, like I said, if Bronze Jan Royce goes up north with his bronze armor and his iron sword and is like, "Come at me, bro," and then the others stab him with their ice pick, and then he dies, he's gonna be like, "But I had bronze."
Was
and then he's gonna die.
Waymar wearing bronze? Do we know?
Steel. He was wearing like chainmail.
Well, because he's a Royce, you would
Yep.
think he would, follow the first men, stuff like that, the ruins, and was he
He's a
Bronze
nice
Yon's
walker.
son?
I don't think so. He might have been like a second or third son. He might have been a son of Robar. Isn't he the other one?
I think that might be it. That sounds familiar. I like the
Whatever.
theory that he was set up. That's going off track here, but yeah.
What theory?
That Waymar was set up.
Yeah, set up by what? By who?
By Craster and by I can't remember if Giora was in on it, but the others were specifically looking for a Stark, and Craster says Waymar has the look of a Stark, and they were expecting for a Stark that was going to have a special weapon, and so when the others like were able to stab him or the sword didn't break, that they were laughing, quote unquote.
They did laugh.
So that's why then they all started stabbing him. Because
Yeah.
they were expecting like a Stark warrior. I'll send you the Reddit thread. It's interesting.
No, you mentioned it. I remember seeing it now, and I don't think that's a thing.
There's
For
a lot
one,
of things that aren't
I don't
things.
think the others were expecting a Stark. I don't think Gior was in on getting 3 of his boys killed on purpose. Craster, maybe. Craster doesn't give a shit, so
Yeah,
if he
Craster
led him
has
over that
no
way,
allegiance.
fair enough. Like, that's not too much of a stretch. But Gior knowingly sending his boys out there to die, that makes 0 sense. And then there's a lot riding on the others were looking for a Stark, and because that kid wasn't a Stark, and then they started laughing and going stabby on him. That seems like a stretch to me, and that's like, if you accept this theory as true, and this theory has 14 bullet points to it, and if you believe all 14, and then we apply it to this situation, I theorize that and then it's a theory on top of a theory. So, too much theorizing.
And I did a shitty job explaining it, but it is really interesting if anybody wants to go look it up on Reddit.
I mean, you pretty much nailed the point of it with the sword and Waymar looks like a Stark and all that other stuff. But again, if you accept my theory, here's another theory to go on top of it, and I'm not into that kind of stuff.
Okay, so that's it. Is there anything else?
No, that's all I had. What do we got coming up next?
I was gonna say, what do we have next? Is it
Catelyn 2.
Is it Cat 2 or is it Davos?
Shit. I sent you a thing. Let me look at the thing that I sent you.
And I still think we should do Theon first, but whatever.
That's not the order of the book.
Well, we're not going by the order of the book anyways. Because if
in chronological order.
In this chapter, she talks about Theon leaving. So shouldn't we immediately after this chapter do the chapter where Theon is leaving?
Except in the timeline, Davos 1 comes up next, which is what we'll be doing next week. And then we do Theon 1. And then we do Cat 2.
So we don't know what's coming up next because I'm going to continue to fight Eric, but you guys will find
Davos
out.
1. I already wrote my notes.
You read the chapter and wrote your notes?
Yep.
Show me.
Nope. You'll hear them next week on the podcast when we do Davos 1. Thanks for listening, guys. That's all I got.
Thanks, guys.